Welcome, everybody, to the Dual Access Podcast, where I explore the intersection of technology, entrepreneurship, careers, and people. Today, I've got a very special guest, Mark Wormgoor. He's the CEO of Tairi. Mark, tell me a little bit about yourself and a brief overview of what Tairi is.
So, 48 years old. I live in the Netherlands. I have a long background in corporates, big companies, in tech. I've always been in tech. Decided to leave my corporate background behind and started Tairi late last year, early this year. What I do with Tairi is I work with software developers in the Philippines. I have a lot of really good experiences with the Philippines, and I work for startups in mostly the Benelux, so Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and we help them with their software development. So that's what we do.
And if I remember right, if I've heard right, Amsterdam in particular is a hotbed for startups now, isn't it?
It is. So, I mean, there's a lot of really big startups as well. So we have some unicorns like Adyen here as well, but also a lot of smaller startups. It's not just Amsterdam. So, for example, we have Eindhoven. Eindhoven has Philips and ASML. They also have a high-tech campus, and there's a lot of really deep tech startups there. I think it's all across the Netherlands. So there is a lot of entrepreneurship in the Netherlands and a lot of startups. Yeah,
that's great.
Absolutely.
What about the Netherlands makes it a good place for entrepreneurs?
Well, I think, first of all, there's just a lot of people are very entrepreneurial. I think that's been the case for, say, the last
kind of a cultural
years. It is a cultural thing. So I think people have been trading. It's very much a services-oriented trading country. And I think we have been for hundreds of years. So it's very much in the culture. So we have a lot of big companies, a lot of big international companies, especially for the size of our country. I think that's quite shocking. Yeah, I think it's in the culture, really. And our government supports it quite well. So we have a lot of freelancers here, but also just a lot of startups and a lot of companies. We actually have TechLeap, and TechLeap is it's a government-funded organization, but they really promote and support a lot of scale-ups. So the startups that want to go bigger and also go international, there's a lot of support for that as well. Yeah, so I think it's a very good climate for startups.
I guess in a way, you're a startup as well, right?
I mean, we don't have our own product really, but I like seeing myself as a startup as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's really we started late last year.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of a startup, a new company, I guess you could say, new company, but you're helping startups. So it's almost like startups helping startups, I guess. But you're bringing, obviously a much bigger set of experiences to that. So what in particular caused you to start Tairi?
So what in particular, I think that goes back to my corporate history. So I worked for Accenture for a long time in consulting. After that, I worked for JD, Jacobs Douwe Egberts. I was head of IT operations. After that role, it got me thinking to what am I going to do next? I worked there for 6 years. It was really time to move on, go and do something different. At that point in time, I really had no idea what I was going to do next. I was sort of done with my career. That job was really what I wanted to achieve in my career. I had nothing left to prove.
Right.
I spent quite some time. I talked to recruiters. I actually went to some job interviews, and none of it really worked for me. And at that point in time, I really thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to go back and apply and work for someone else for 3 or 5 years. I'm going to start my own company. So I still spent about 2 years thinking, what is it that I'm actually going to do? Last 2 years, did some freelancing as well. And this is really what I want to do for 2 different reasons. Well, I want to start my own company, be an entrepreneur. I think that was the main reason. But then what is the idea? I really like helping people, coaching people, giving them advice. I actually did a coaching training back in 2020 as well. And there's a lot of coaches here in the Netherlands. So if you want some support here, that's quite easy to get. I think we have hundreds, if not thousands of coaches that can help people. It's not so much the case in other countries. So I actually wanted to help people in another country, give some of the things that I've learned in my career and give that to them as well. So I picked the Philippines because I know the country. I've worked with them in the past. And really what I want to do with Tairi, I mean, of course it is a business. And of course I want to make money at the front end. But really what I want to do is help the software developers that I work with advance in their career, give them some of the lessons that I've learned in my career. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's why I started. In my career previously, I worked for a consulting company that had an onshore-offshore model. So we worked with developers in Vietnam, and some of them would come to the client site and work from there, and there'd be some kind of rotation. Is that the same way it's set up with Tairi?
No.
Okay.
No, we don't do that. So we are consciously all remote. So the developers stay in the Philippines, they work in the Philippines, they work, I mean, post-COVID, I think everybody knows how to work remote. They're not even in an office. So I don't have an office there. They work from home. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's quite well accepted now.
Yeah. I'm thinking back now that you've said that, I guess it was a necessity back when I had that job because there wasn't the idea of kind of working remote. And it actually was quite difficult to work remotely with them anyway. So how big's your company? Is it just you?
No, it was just me. I actually did my first non-developer hire last week. So I hired an HR manager / recruiter in the Philippines, of course, because I do a lot of my recruitment there. Up until now, I did that myself. It's quite time consuming, and also it goes with ups and downs. So sometimes I get a request and I spend like a couple of days full-time recruiting, and then it goes down. So I decided to hire someone. So it's now the two of us. And of course, we also have our team of developers that are working for our clients. Yeah.
And why the Philippines? I know you mentioned in your bio that you particularly enjoy working with people from the Philippines, but why would you recommend people work with people from the Philippines versus maybe Vietnam or India or one of the other kind of typical countries that people might outsource to?
Yeah. So in my career, I've worked with a lot of different countries, but not all of them. So I did a lot of work with Eastern Europe. The reason I didn't pick Eastern Europe is that the rates and the salaries are going up quite fast at the moment. So I think where they used to be quite affordable a couple of years ago, I think they're slowly starting to get close to our Western European salaries, which is really good for them. But I think in the model that maybe doesn't work too well. So I started looking at Asia. There are two countries that I have worked quite a bit with, India and the Philippines. So I don't have any experience with, I hear a lot of people say good things about like Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Vietnam. I haven't worked with those countries, so I can't speak to them. And also that means I don't want to give it a try just because I don't know. So India and the Philippines, I think India, they're quite different cultures. Why do I like the Philippines? The people are very friendly, very service oriented, so they really like to help. They're very committed. I think that's a good part. So I really like they're very pragmatic as well, which I think is a very good fit, at least for the Dutch culture. And also, I think the pragmatism, they're hardworking, they're all smart. So all of the people that I work with have at least a bachelor degree in information science, which is really good. Their English is really good. So it's less Asian than maybe some of the other countries that we speak to. So it's very mainstream English that they speak. They're also open to new ideas. They also come up with new ideas. So, I just really like the culture. The reason I picked them, I had some experience in the past with outsourcing, just like you, with the Philippines, and that's why I got to know the country and working with them, and that's why I picked it.
Yeah, and I guess if I were going to do something similar, I would probably pick people with Vietnam because I knew I worked with them. I knew their kind of working culture and things like that. Now I have noticed, like you said, people in the Philippines tend to have very, very good English, which is definitely a differentiator between them and some of the other Asian countries. So, today I started working with an EA from the Philippines, and it was, I would have thought I was speaking to somebody next door. So that was really refreshing because I didn't know what to expect. So now, speaking to you about the Philippines, it totally makes sense why you would do that. Yeah. So you've worked with some big names before, like Accenture and Shell in your previous roles. What are some of the key lessons you've learned with collaborating with such massive organizations?
So I think I joined Accenture in 2006, so a long time ago, 17 years ago now. And I've worked with Shell for a long time, and this was already like in the 2008, 9, 10 area. And what I learned there, so it's a global company. So the teams that I worked with were part in the Netherlands, but there was a part of the team in Malaysia. There was a part of the team in Houston, sometimes in London. Also there, they had offshore teams in India. So I think back in those days, I already spent most of my time on, I think it was MS Office Communicator still at the time. It was even before Link, before Skype. So it was a long time ago. Yeah, so I think I've been working virtually for almost 20 years, about 15 years at the moment. So I think that's one of the things I learned. The other things are really quite different. So in a company like an Accenture or a Shell, I mean, budgets are very different from what I'm working with these days. So for the startups that I work with, 10,000 euros is quite a bit of money. Whereas for HL or an Accenture, I mean, it's still quite a bit of money, but they're a lot easier to sign off on something.
And,
it's
not even a
these types
error
of companies. Exactly. So those kind of companies with their budgets and their revenues, it doesn't show up there. For startup, I mean, that's a lot of money. So it is different. They're very cost conscious.
Yeah. And how have those experiences that you had working with those companies influenced your role as the CEO at Tairi?
So I think a lot of it is, I mean, I started managing teams probably also about 20 years ago. So I learned so much about managing teams, about hiring, about recruitment. I think that's really helped me. So working with remote teams, but also doing my recruitment interviews remote. If I did not have this experience with these companies and the training that I had on hiring and recruitment, I couldn't have done this. So I think that's probably the biggest part. I think the coaching has really helped. So I mean, in all of my jobs, I've had to give feedback as well. So I think that's really helped. All of the trainings that they provided as part of the job. I mean, in Accenture, we had all these annual trainings to go to, but all these other mandatory trainings. The same thing with JDE. So I've learned just so much over the past years about just about everything, about finance, about people, recruitment, leadership, coaching. Yeah, I think all those lessons are really beneficial to what I do now at Tairi.
Yeah. And you mentioned a minute ago about communication and the tools you've used in the past. How do you communicate with your team in the Philippines, and how can people make the most of that communication?
So I mean, they're remote, so they're also in a different time zone. So the time difference between them and us right now is 6 hours. In the winter, it's going to be 7 hours. So we do have a bit of overlap. The end of their afternoon is our morning. So we have we try to do all of our meetings that we need to do in the mornings. But the rest is remote. So what I try to do is a lot of asynchronous communication. So sending them messages that they don't necessarily need to respond to right away through email, and we have our own internal Slack. Which I really like. So I think I also use the Slack for some more informal communications, a bit more friendly or offline or other types of communications as well. Just to build I mean, I haven't seen most of them in person ever. I haven't been to the Philippines since pre-COVID, actually. That was the last time. So it really is, just also trying to build that personal connection with them. Sometimes having a bit more of a personal discussion, like about the weekends or something else. I think that's what I try to do. Just build a close relationship, but also the asynchronous part helps with the time zones. So I can still send them something late at night or in my afternoons, and they'll just pick it up the next day, which is fine.
Yeah, great. And Tairi has a strong focus on meaningful work and corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about how you're making an impact, especially in developing countries?
So I think that there's two parts to that. The first of all, the salaries that I pay. I do go out. First, I work with software developers. So software developers are generally higher paid than most other professions in outsourcing. So the people that I work with, they have quite a decent pay. Actually, the pay that I give them it's not even middle class anymore. It's the bottom of upper class salaries that I pay them. So I actually do pay them quite good salaries. That helps them, that helps their families. The Philippines doesn't really have a system where they take care of the elders. So it's really up to the families and the working people to take care of their families, but also their parents as they grow older and as they retire. So that helps. I think financially is a big way. The other way that I really help them is also by giving feedback, coaching. I want to set up a whole training program for them as well, where I give them a lot of the lessons and the things that I've learned over the past years. I do see that they aren't necessarily as well versed in things like giving feedback or how do I present myself online on a video or very straightforward things like that. How do I ask questions? How do I ask for feedback? Is it okay to ask for feedback? There's a lot of quite straightforward things that they don't necessarily ask for or know how to do, which I think for us, having worked on corporate world, is quite straightforward and standard. It's a lot of those things that I do want to give them, so they can grow more, they can grow faster in their careers, they can find even better opportunities after me.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're doing a really good service for them, or really influencing their lives if you can get them to a point where they're almost too good for you, right? And they move on to something else, and that's the way that you can kind of keep giving back to them and their culture. Yeah. So the tech industry is saturated with lots of different platforms and tools. What sets Tairi apart in terms of the services you offer to startups?
So I think the main reason is that the people that we work with are quite affordable still. They're highly skilled. Most of the developers that I work with have 5 to 10 years of experience. So they're not just out of college. I mean, they've worked for quite some time already. The work that they've done has either been in the Philippines, or often they've already worked with clients in the US or in Australia. I don't see a lot that have worked with Europe before, but they've worked with international clients already. But they're still, quite affordable. The rates are 20 to 30, 35 euros an hour. If you compare that to the Netherlands, that's probably a fourth of what you would pay for a similar developer here. So for the same budget, you could get a team of 4 developers instead of just 1. I think that's one of the things. The technologies that we use are the mainstream technologies. So we don't do very high innovative technologies. It's a lot of mainstream work like C#.NET, JavaScript, front ends, back ends. That's the kind of work, PHP. So it's the kind of mainstream development work that we do.
Okay. So you mentioned the wages you pay them are the equivalent to 15 to 30 euros per hour. So that's actually even a living wage in the Netherlands as well. So they're coming from a country that is significantly less developed economically than the Netherlands. So that really is a lot of money to them. So that's really fantastic that you do for them. I didn't realize that. That's quite the salary you're paying them. So good for you for helping people that way. Yeah. Is that really satisfying to you?
It is. I'm enjoying. Well, first of all, I'm enjoying myself. I love challenging myself, learning new things, doing new things. So the reason I started this is also to do something new. I've never started a company before at scale. I'm learning a lot about marketing and sales at the moment, which is, I'm really enjoying that. So that's one of the reasons I did that. The other part, I love helping people. I love giving people advice, or just general helping them get to the next step. So I do that as well. Actually, I do here in the Netherlands. I work with startups, but I also coach a few startups pro bono, just because I just enjoy working with startups and giving them some advice. So that's really why I like doing this. I have no idea for how long I'm going to do this, but for now, I'm really enjoying it, and I just like it.
Yeah. So you do a lot of coaching for others, but you also get coaching for yourself. What do you look for in a coach?
So what I look for in a coach, I've had quite a few coaches in my life already. I think the first one was over 10 years ago. I think a coach needs to ask the right questions, but also I think the most important part is get me out of my comfort zone. It's really easy to stay in your comfort zone and do the things you've always done. But you're always going to be in the same place that you were before. So I think that's the most important part. Somebody that's going to challenge me and that's going to do that over and over again. And that's also, I work with Dan Martel, as do you. And I love him just for continuously saying, you can do more. Just keep getting out of your comfort zone. And he just keep challenging me to do better and to do more. And I really like that.
Yeah, me as well. I'm just jumping into this myself, so it's really exciting to see the diversity of people like yourself, and going all the way from people that have been doing this for a long time to people like myself that have never done it. So I get a lot of value of that, and hopefully the people that have been doing this for a long time get a lot of value out of it as well. So what are the next big steps for Tairi? Do you have anything particularly exciting? Any projects or initiatives you can share with us?
At the moment, so I think I just hired my first recruiter/HR manager. That's been a really big step.
That must be a big relief though, right? That must be a huge time saver for you.
Not yet, because now I'm at the point where I'm just handing over all of my tasks. So I'm probably spending double time, where I'm actually now at the point where I'm going to do Loom recordings of, I did that last week for the timesheets that we do, and now it's for the invoicing, and then it's a recruitment. So I actually spend more time at the moment, but hopefully it's going to be a really big time saver, because I spend a lot of time also doing admin tasks like timesheets and invoices. And so he's going to take part of that up. So that's going to be a big time saver. Why I actually hired him is also to do some other work for me. So the first, I talked about the training program. So I have a lot of ideas in my head about training that I want to give and share. He actually has built training programs before, so he's going to help me set all of that up and actually get it out of my head and onto, well, no paper, but onto video or some kind of training platform. That's one thing that I want to do. The other thing that I've had in my head for most of the year now is I want to start a mailing list for similar people in the Philippines. So like software developers, Scrum Masters, QA engineers, things like that. And share some of my lessons with them as well, just through a weekly newsletter. So that's the other thing that I am going to set up and going to pick up over the next couple of weeks. It's something that I've put off because I didn't have the time for it, but hopefully now with Christian on board, we're going to be able to do that as well. Of course, that's also a great recruitment instrument for me, but it also allows me just to share more information and the knowledge that I have with other people. Yeah.
So you've hired Christian to take on a lot of these tests, and in the long term, you're going to save yourself a lot of time. And that's one of the themes in our Dan Martell classes. Constantly look for ways to buy back your time. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with that time that is now going to be freed up?
My biggest thing is marketing and sales. So I need to scale up my marketing and sales efforts. So I think that's where most of my time is going to go. Right now, I have some weeks where I have a lot of time to work on marketing and sales, and that's great. And then other weeks, other stuff comes in, or I need to do like recruitment, and I'm lost for 3 days trying to find the next great developer, and then I can scale it up again. So it's very much with peaks and troughs. So that's what I really enjoy. I'm going to go into marketing and sales and see how much quicker and faster we can grow Tairi.
Yeah. Well, one last question about Tairi and yourself. So as an obviously seasoned entrepreneur, what's some advice you would have for startups trying to scale their tech and their teams?
I think, well, if you're starting up, I'd say get an advisor or a mentor. I'd say that's probably the most important one. Get somebody that close to you that can actually help and give you some advice. Like I said, I'm now helping an example. I have these 2 young guys, they're in their 20s, and they started this great new app, which is like for health in companies. So it's like the employee vitality app. They're actually doing quite well. They're now wondering, how do we scale up? What's our next hire? Where do we go? We just have like 1 session a month. It takes an hour, but it really helps them take their next step. So, I mean, it doesn't cost me a lot of time. I love doing it. I do it pro bono, and that really helps them take the next step. So I'd say the most important one, get an advisor, somebody to help you, give you the advice that you need. That helps. And the second part is just to take your time. I mean, you don't necessarily need to go fast. Just do it right. I would say do a lot of experimentation, take small steps, and then keep your eye on the North Star and just gradually get there. You'll get there.
And you're volunteering your time to help some of these startups. Are you seeing them then go on to do that for other startups?
I haven't seen it yet because I've only started it this year. So not yet, but I really do hope so. That would be interesting. It'd be fun to see.
Yeah. But hopefully they see, the value that you're adding for them, and then they're going to want to give to others. And that helps the whole community then, right? And it helps the whole country. It helps the Philippines, all these places that they're hiring developers.
Exactly.
So let me finish off with just a couple of fun questions, I'll call them. And you may have heard these before, but let's go through them anyway. So if you could have dinner with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be?
Oh, wow. I think that's a big question. I think Dan would be on the list. Dan Martell, of course. Just because, I mean, I just love his inspiration.
So not kissing up or anything, right?
No, absolutely not. I just love the inspiration that he gives. And I mean, the calls are on our evenings. So it's late in the evening for us, at least for me here.
Yeah.
I just get so much energy from the call. I mean, it's on Wednesday and just from Thursday morning, I just have so much energy.
I struggle to think about how am I going to take all these amazing ideas and put them into practice, right? Because you can't do them all at once, No. But anyway, so that's one.
I record all of them. Yeah, Dan is one. The other one I think would be an interesting one. So what I haven't said, I started my career actually in physics. So I never finished university, but I was always interested in physics. I still read all the articles. So, I mean, if I could talk to somebody like an Einstein and that's the dead person, I just love what those kind of people do. And I think it's so amazing how those people work.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? How they would their daily routines were very set, which is one of the things that Dan talks to us about, but they would just come up with their ideas by walking around and, you know, and observing the world. And it's just, I just can't see people doing that these days.
And they're so far out there, those ideas. They're like, they're not even close. I mean, they're not evolutionary. They're like complete revolutionary. So exactly, I just have no idea how they do that. So yeah, I find that absolutely
be good to learn,
inspiring,
though, right?
and amazing. Yeah. And I think the third person, I think, would be a tough one, but this would be an interesting one. I just started reading the book 10X, and I just love that book. Michelangelo, not sure that he speaks English or Dutch. He's dead anyway.
Bring a translator along with you.
But yeah, I think he would be, I mean, after reading that book and seeing what he's done and how many times he 10X through his life, I'd also love to talk to him and see how he's done it and how he looks back on his life. But, yeah. Won't be able to do that, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah. And last question. So one surprising fact about you that people generally don't know.
That's an interesting one. I think a lot of people know a lot of things about me. Well, maybe this one.
It's all online,
you can't see it here. Yeah, no, you can't see it here. It's the house that I live in these days. I don't live in a house. This is actually a houseboat. So we bought this earlier this year. It's quite
on a canal
mainstream here. Yeah, in a canal in the Netherlands. We bought it earlier this year. So I know it still. I mean, it's a concrete tub. Right, and it's only about 12 years out, so old. So it's well isolated. It's modern, but still, I live on the water in sort of a boat. Yeah.
Did it take you time to adjust to living like that?
Not at all. I mean, it's quite steady. So even in a bad storm, you don't feel it moving. So it's really.
I just mean in general, lifestyle wise, moving from you know, it's almost like moving from the outside world to the inside world, right? You're more. Are you more secluded, I guess?
Actually, it's in the middle of the city, so it's not that bad, but the view is amazing. I mean, we're on the water and we just have like so many water birds here, and we could spend the entire day just looking out the window and just watching the birds. And sometimes we spend too much time, then we think let's get back to work. But it's really nice.
Do they make those with glass bottoms?
I don't think so. No, not that I've seen, which is too bad. So we actually have
fish and you know, things swimming below you as well. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go downstairs, our bottom floor, actually the windows are only the top part, so the top half, because below that's the water. So actually people have come here and they thought, why didn't they put a window below the water? I think they could do that, but it's probably really expensive. So we don't have any below. It would be absolutely amazing to have a window below the water, but we don't. No, it's too bad.
What gave you the idea to do that?
So when we were going to buy our next house, we wanted to live on the water. So we wanted to live and I mean, it's the Netherlands, so there's quite a few houses that are at the water, like at a canal or have a garden towards the canal. So that's what we put in, and that's what we were looking for. And
but
then
usually you have a street between the houses and the canals, right? At least what I've seen.
Not too often. Okay. Yeah, no, there's actually quite a few houses that have their gardens on the canal where you can just put a boat in the garden. That's sort of what we were looking for. And then this house came by, and we wanted to live either in Amsterdam or Utrecht. This house in Utrecht came by, and we just thought we're going to put in a bid. And
see what happens.
We actually got it. So and it was very nice.
That's amazing.
We haven't regretted it for a single day.